$300 million, the mission as the North Star.
Welcome to Third Derivative Mission Log, the D3 mission log, tracking how we are building while flying it the world's largest climate tech accelerator. And this is the episode 7 of series 3 of our mission log, the last in this series, but also a really significant one because Bryan Guido Hassin, who has been the founding CEO of Third Derivative, is actually stepping into his next mission in life and has brought this organization to an incredible place. And so we're going to have a bit of an extended mission log here to recount some of the stories from the last couple of years as we've begun the Third Derivative journey and mission, and get some lessons learned from Bryan. Bryan, great to see you.
Great to see you, Danny, as well. And really excited to just reflect with you a little bit on the really exciting journey and mission that we've been on together here over this last about 2 years total, but about last 1 year that we've been recording it and sharing it in real time through the mission log.
Yeah, and it's been an amazing trip in more ways than one. What are your sort of standout moments or memories that you want to share, maybe right up to the current moment with 62 companies we now have going through the ecosystem with investors and corporate partners as well?
Yeah, I mean, as you were describing it, right, and how we begin every mission log episode describing how we're building the world's largest and best resourced climate tech accelerator. And as I kind of reflect on what we've built so far, I mean, we've kind of built it. Doesn't mean that we don't have plenty more to learn, plenty more to which to aspire, but we really have done in many ways. And usually at the end of a season here, we do take a moment to pause and reflect and just kind of look at the numbers. And as I look at them, they were actually, in all modesty, they're actually pretty astounding. Right? We've built the largest and best resource climate tech ecosystem in the world. Some numbers that you've heard before, like $4 trillion US in market cap of our corporate partners, now up to $7 billion US in assets under management from our investor partners. And it's an ecosystem that's just kind of growing on its own now. We're not having to put our shoulder behind it. Like we have people and organizations coming to us all the time to try to be part of what we built. So we kind of hit that critical mass, which is a very important milestone. As we've discussed on previous episodes, one of our key metrics of success is really around the capital mobilized throughout the ecosystem. And the numbers are in, and PwC has audited the results, et cetera. And we've now had more than $300 million US invested in our kind of first cadre of startups here. I think it's fair to say, again, we have plenty of room for growth and to do better, et cetera. But I think it's fair to say that we have some pretty strong validation of our model of being able to catalyze capital kind of flowing to these incredibly impactful, high potential startups.
In just over 18 months, I should remind folk, or under 18 months, actually.
I mean, it's really more like 12 to 13 months that we've actually been operational. And so I am very proud of that. And it's a foundation on which to build more and to increase the slope of the curve, but it's a great start out of the gate. Operationally, I also look at the organization. We have kind of multi-year revenue assured. We've built this amazing all-star team of nearly 30 people now. But crucially, for a startup like us, we've got a long runway ahead of us, which is gives us the confidence to be able to take kind of big swings and do things that are ambitious. Our team just finished an exercise in which we're really working to tie the work that we're doing to impact that we can quantify and share out and be held accountable to, which is a really big step as well. Kind of moving from the hypothetical into the tangible and the real and the measurable. And as you know, or as all of our listeners will know, because we've covered it on recent episodes, we've now got a production system in place for pulling startups in on a continuous basis. Our first cohort was a huge undertaking. Our second cohort was less of a huge undertaking, but still a significant undertaking. And now we're kind of hitting our stride with kind of momentum and a bit of, a perpetual motion machine that we can kind of keep it up.
Not quite rinse and repeat, but a lot of smoother processes and ways to onboard startups and introduce them to the corporate partners and get them to scale sooner.
Yeah, kind of hit the ground running from day one, and with now kind of features built in to say, okay, well, this cohort we're going to focus on direct air capture. In this next cohort, we're going to focus on building technology, et cetera. Or we're going to do those in parallel with a more kind of general cohort as well. So just kind of the flexibility and the ease with which to kind of really keep pushing on the accelerator for bringing startups in. And as I hinted at earlier, for me, one of the key metrics, kind of the key signals that says, okay, we've really arrived in a different phase, is that when we started this, we really had to go out to people and share our message and evangelize our mission, and really kind of sell what we were doing. And today, of course, we still need to do that, et cetera, but we have tons of partners, of startups, of people who want to come work with us, coming in just inbound of their own volition, and also as a result of the great marketing machine that we've set up. We've had Elaine and Allison on as guests here recently as well. So again, please don't mistake any of this for the hubris to say, oh, we're so great and we've got it all figured out. But really, we have kind of entered a new phase. And so, I kind of came here to launch a startup, and I would, in all modesty, say that we're not really a startup anymore. Some of the terminology that, like if we take Steve Blank's definition of a startup, it's a temporary organization searching for a scalable, repeatable business model. And if I can paraphrase Master Yoda, I would say, searching, found something we have. And again, there's a lot more search to do, but it has a lot of practice, especially with my 3-year-old these days. But we have found something that we can start kind of really kind of doubling down on and building on as a platform.
We're no longer looking for it. We're now trying to work out how to do it again, better, faster, at more scale. And to that, Bryan, my question for you, sort of as a serial startup guy, because this is why we brought you in, to bring that culture of entrepreneurialism and someone with the sort of scars and stripes, as I call them, that you've had. I think this is your 8th go round or something in that order.
If we count third derivative, it's the 9th, but yeah.
Well, yeah. So, and I do count third derivative definitely a startup. We got you going and gave you not a lot to work with, but a good idea. And what is it that sort of makes that startup stage feel like emotionally or otherwise something that you can hand off to the next players? Because this is a contact sport. We're trying to change the outcome on the climate. We're all in this together. I think of you as sort of passing the baton now as you depart to someone else to lead this team. How does that feel, and how do you know that it's all right to do so, if you will?
I don't know if this is the way you see it, Danny, but jump in and if it is or if it isn't. But for me, as a founder, you always look at a startup that you found as a baby, right? And but the purpose of babies, like a startup, is to be temporary. You don't want them to be babies forever. You want them to grow up, and you want them to develop the skills and the resources to be autonomous and to go on and do kind of bigger and better things for which they don't need you, which they don't have to lean on you. Hopefully they can get out of the house and start paying their own rent or what have you. And so as a parent founder here, I don't think I will ever be devoid of third derivative. I will always be cheering for it and working behind the scenes or even in front of the scenes to help third derivative be successful in its next endeavor and its next, and certainly the amazing team members that we've brought in. But I do think it's I don't know, let's say it's at least a teenager or a teenager or something at this point. So it's in a good position to go off to the next school or what have you, and kind of shift gears a little bit and really double down on what kind of operational excellence and scalability and things that I can feel comfortable, I say, kind of passing that baton, because I think it's in a really good place with a really strong foundation and a great team kind of leading it.
It's a good emotional resonance. You feel confident in the kid going out and exploring, trying the next thing, or no longer searching.
Maybe kid will get into a little trouble along the way or what have you, but that's also part of the development journey, right?
Well, parenting metaphors aside, the purpose of all this really is acceleration. The third derivative is a pun on that in the first place, what are the startups are you feeling are demonstrating that in these very, still early days? I mean, yes, our organization and the startup of Third Derivative has gotten to a kind of a critical escape velocity and can be comfortable in its orbit. But what we exist to do is support other technology startups to get out sooner, better, faster. Which of the stories do you take great pride in and really look fondly on from this stage?
Yeah, as you can imagine, with nearly 70 and soon to be more than 70, we'll announce several more here pretty soon. There are a lot of stories that we've participated in, that we've co-authored, etc., with these startups, and maybe it's hard to really pick just a few, but recognizing that probably our listeners don't want to hear 70 plus stories. Let me focus on 5, and these will go in kind of roughly chronological order, and some of them we've heard before on this podcast, so you can think of it as a bit of a highlight reel. Some of them are new though, and not off the presses. So one, I'd say first story was really our first validation that this really multi-stakeholder ecosystem could have an additive and catalytic effect in help startups that otherwise would have very low or no possibility of advancing. This was we had a very deep tech startup coming in that our team was very excited about. We could see the impact potential for them at scale, but investors could not wrap their heads around that startup. And so we brought in a couple of our corporates who were very relevant for that startup. And the first one did kind of technical due diligence on it and said, oh yeah, what they're doing, like that's real. And if that succeeds, that could be incredibly impactful for our business. And then another one came in and said, they kind of evaluated more from a business case and said, wow, yeah, if what they're doing, works, then we want to do a pilot with them and for them, a pilot was like at 10,000 locations. So it was really big scale. And so it was really only by bringing all of these elements together. So one corporate to validate the technical diligence, one corporate to validate the business case, and then investors to come in and say, okay, wow, there's a there, that would get everyone to take a leap at the same time. And so the investors made an investment and the startup came into the program and they're working closely with the corporates and they're moving along at a clip, whereas otherwise they would have been dead. So that's a story that it validates a lot of.
You've told that story very well and teased it without revealing the identity. Which of the startups is that?
I think I'm still supposed to keep that identity hidden. So for some of these, I can reveal the identity, but for that one, I think they still would prefer to keep that one.
No, I love that, and that model is what I think is the genius of the Third Derivative plan to get the ecosystem working in pursuit of acceleration. Yeah, so good. Love that.
So one I can reveal the the name of, though, and it's one that we've covered a lot recently on this, which is TS Conductor. Here again, this was a real success story of the Third Derivative model, in which they came in, as startups often do, to an accelerator, and maybe they have some work that they need to do, trying to figure out why they're not getting funded. Is it our team? Is it our business model? Is it our strategy? Is it our execution, et cetera? And so we did help them work through that as a normal accelerator would. And we helped them connect throughout our ecosystem with really promising corporate partners, with investors who ultimately invested. I think there was something like 4 times oversubscribed for the investment that they looked to do. And as you'll recall, helped connect them with Amory Lovins, who actually joined their board of advisors. And so that was a real success story of kind of, if you look at all the boxes that we might be able to check for a startup, it's kind of like we hit them all. So really proud of TS Conductor and very excited since they've raised that round to see them going and going and going.
And I got to say, as a person fairly steeped in this technology set and issues of renewables and the electricity grid and electrifying everything, the problem of transmission in this country and around the globe, I really hadn't fully appreciated. I mean, we talk a lot about storage. I talk a lot about storage, I guess. Transmission is equally, if not more important, to innovate and fix so that we can do the scale energy transition that we need to do in the time we need to do it. And TS Conductor are just one of the game changer businesses that I've seen in that space since becoming fairly aware of it just in the last few years. So that's a real impact story as well, I think.
I think so. And you may recall, Danny, that I spent a lot of my early career in Texas, which is almost the poster child for transmission challenges, right? You've got
Nice.
the wind blowing in West Texas, you've got all of the demand in kind of Central and East Texas, and every kilometer that the electrons travel down kind of shoddy transmission lines is a kilometer that there are significant losses, where given the status quo of transmission lines, they're very heavy and they're prone to failure and getting knocked around due to natural disasters, et cetera. So there are reliability issues, et cetera. So companies like like TS Conductor, that can help dramatically upgrade our transmission infrastructure, have, as you say, an incredible impact.
Yeah. Okay, what's number 3?
So number 3 is Ready, one of our startups based out of Nigeria. And this has less to do with their kind of success in the program and more to do with our interactions with them. So the CEO of Ready was having a conversation with us. It was actually during our first summit. So this is our inaugural summit when we're launching to the world, et cetera. And he said, hey, guys, this all sounds great. And we're very excited to be part of this. But it also sounds like you're really kind of stuck in a kind of a North American centric and kind of a Silicon Valley centric model that we don't see it applying to us as well. And so for me, this is a story that I enjoy because we listened, right? We went through an intentional exercise of decentering our model, our communications, and then to kind of proactively working to build kind of separate and new capabilities in other geographies, and we're not there yet. This is still part of a journey. We're still on the mission, but I like this story because it's so reflective of the humility that we precisely,
and again, I'm sorry to interrupt your flow, but the impact of that thinking, I think, can't be underestimated, because bringing the resources you described in the ecosystem that supported the first and the second companies, mostly geared towards the US market, but bringing that ecosystem to the emerging markets of the world where the real energy demand is going to grow. We forget that the emissions profile of America is flat and declining, has been for years, and will continue to be, whereas the emissions profile of countries like Nigeria, where Ready are from, which is going to be bigger than the United States by population soon, are growing like a weed. And if we don't decenter and deliver these support services to these startups in those places, then the atmosphere is done. It doesn't matter what we do in the States. So your oversight of that direction, or that shift in focus and ability to serve startups everywhere, I think has been really huge, and thank you for that. Listening.
Yeah, it takes more than listening, right? It takes action and execution, and I think we're on the right path, but there's many lessons to learn along the way, I'm sure. So the next one, this is another one I'll have to keep confidential, but this is a fun story just for me personally. So there was a startup we had where the founder reached out to me personally, said, look, I'm loving Third Derivative. I'm getting all kinds of great support and help. But right now, what I really need is a seasoned entrepreneur to help me think through a corporate strategic investment that I'm entertaining right now. And I'm not sure I'm thinking about it the right way. And are there gotchas or strings attached, or et cetera, that I should be looking out for? And that was just fun and rewarding for me as a seasoned entrepreneur to roll up my sleeves and kind of step into his boardroom with him and help him think through it. And I think he personally, and then their company as a whole, arrived at a really good outcome, and one in which there were a couple of, I would say, landmines that needed to be identified and avoided. So it felt like I'd create a little bit of value, but B, it just felt great to be so closely connected and partnered with one of the founders, as opposed to several levels removed and just thinking about the Third Derivative organization.
And can I just stop you there, because in the vein of this podcast, historically we've tried to share lessons we're learning as we go building this accelerator, because we hope other people are building accelerators for climate solutions around the world in different ways and scales and places. That kind of interpersonal piece, I'm a ultimately a decision maker responsible for the startup, the founder. Maybe I don't know which company this was, so can't say, but I'm assuming kind of fairly isolated, needing someone just to bounce ideas off. That's a really important part of the work, isn't it? The sort of emotional support act that people think accelerators are all, business and training acumen, and a bit of money if you can, but it's half of it's the therapy we provide, right?
So I think so, based on my experience on the founder side of the table, and call it another experiment. We're really looking to take that support to the next level by launching next week a CEO roundtable for all of our CEOs, recognizing that the CEO role as a founder CEO of a startup can be a lonely place to be. And so, yes, we will address specific challenges and hard skills, et cetera, that CEOs need. But my hypothesis would be that a lot of the benefit is just going to come from that kind of psychological support and feeling less alone, feeling kind of supported by their peers. And I'm excited in my first kind of post third derivative CEO role to be volunteering in that capacity.
And then also for the mentoring, you provide help read the term sheet and, keep an eye out for traps for young players kind of trick. That's a critical function as well. I mean, that's a more standard function, I guess, than the emotional work, but the mentoring and a little bit of advice on how to read the black and white, that's a big deal too, yeah?
Yeah, you described, multi-time founders of having scars and stripes, and maybe there's some work we can do to reduce the number of scars that the next generation of founders has.
Excellent. Yeah.
So,
all right, number 5.
This one's hot off the presses. So Bazago, which is part of our cohort 419, has recently been in the news for closing more than $4 million US round. Really exciting startup, kind of propelling electric bus transportation in Kenya. And I have notifications set up to let me know every time the third derivative is mentioned in the news. And third derivative has been mentioned in the news basically every time that Bazago has been mentioned in the news. And that's because, and I want to quote the founder here, he says, so he posted about their participation in third derivative along with this news announcement of their round closing. He said, having Bazago selected to be part of third derivative was one of the first big wins for our company. At the time, we were little more than 2 founders with a mission and an idea summarized in a slide deck. The third derivative team recognized the climate and environmental justice impact of what we were hoping to achieve and got behind us. Being part of this game-changing climate tech community every day is an inspiration, and third derivative support has been invaluable in helping us get to where we are today. And, that's why we get up in the morning, right? It's like that right there. And they're not unique in that regard. We've got a lot of, I would say, very complimentary feedback from our founders, but just every time there's a story like that, it feels so validating about whether the metrics are showing this or not, that we have founders who feel like we're being deeply additive and even invaluable, even critical in their journey to scale and impact. And that's a story that we will always feel good about, and I personally will always.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So you should, and yeah, it's very profound, really. I mean, if we can help electrify Kenya's vehicle fleet faster than it would just by standard market transition, then we are doing the Kenyan community and the world a favor, and that's awesome to hear that credit given, and good for you too. So thoughts as you sort of sign off here? I don't know, how would you like to leave the audience and sign off this series?
Maybe let me just, since the entire series was built around sharing lessons learned, let me just pick out a couple ones and super briefly, not to dive into them, although happy to engage with anyone on Twitter, LinkedIn, or other spheres if they want to dive in deeper. The New Energy Network Slack community, for example. But as I reflect on the 2 years of building something very kind of impactful here, first lesson is just keep the mission front and center. There's so many distractions, so many things to focus on, but with the mission as the North Star, kind of everything else really lines up to support it. 2 is just leading with ambition and urgency for the exponentiality of what we're hoping to achieve here. Just this morning, I was having a call with Nicerta, and they referred to, in a very kind of complimentary and I would say even an admiring way, to third derivative having burst onto the scene. I love that. Yeah, so lead for the burst. go for
Yeah.
go for the big win. And at the same time, always remaining people centric, recognizing that everyone from your team to your partners to the startups are people at the end of the day, and so kind of leading with that empathy not only helps you create a better product and a more sustainable team, but ultimately I think supports the path to impact. As a startup, and even I think once maybe past a startup field, but when you're in a context that's changing dynamically very quickly, just always be learning. So even, it can be tempting at times to say, okay, you know what, we're done learning, let's shift gears and completely move into execution mode. But there's always something to learn, and that's the only way really to stay even half a step ahead of the game. And then maybe finally, as you're learning, always be sharing. There's so much value in sharing out what you're learning in public. We do that at Third Derivative. Obviously, we do it here with the mission log. We do it with all of our research and insight briefs that we put out there. And it really, coming back to keeping the mission front and center, it helps us all kind of go farther together. There can be, I think, an impulse for people to say, oh, we've got some proprietary information, let's keep it to ourselves. But I'd say it's better for everyone, including the organization, to share it out, because actually it helps others see the way we're seeing, and drives great conversation, and even brings kind of partners into our ecosystem. So maybe on that note, I'll leave it and say this has been an awesome learning journey, and an awesome sharing journey. I'm really grateful for everyone who's kind of participated along with us. And this was the mission log, and I'd say maybe the mission 1 complete. Mission 2 still out there, and this is Bryan, Guido, Hassin signing off.
Stardate.
Stardate 2022-02-11, date of recording. Who knows when we'll actually publish here.